rise and reign of Haile Selassie I, 1916 to 74. Ras Tafari was one of the most consequential leaders in modern African history, born to a noble family in eastern Ethiopia. Tafari Makonnen was surrounded by privilege and prestige from the very earliest of his life. Through his mother's bloodline, the very late claim to Ethiopian Solomonic dynasty, which according to the traditional beliefs had the empire from as far back as the year 980 BC. According to ancient texts known as Kabra Nagast, which is translated as the Glory of Kings Dynasty, began with the Queen of Sheba, who traveled from Ethiopia to visit Israel's King Solomon, the son of David. Although this famous meeting between the two monarchs is referenced in both the Old and New Testament of the Christian Bible, the Kabra Nagast goes into more detail, telling of how the queen fell pregnant shortly after meeting King Solomon and subsequently gave birth to her son Menelik I, who became the first Solomonic emperor of Ethiopia. Ras Tafari's parents died in his early childhood years, and he was adopted by his father's cousin, Emperor Menelik II. Growing up in the corridors of power, the young Tafari would gain first-rate education in power politics and develop a unique charm and ruthlessness, which would ultimately see him as the very top of Ethiopian society. Standing at just over 5 feet tall, Tafari Makonnen was noticeably shorter than most Ethiopian nobles, but what he lacked in physicality, he made up for in his charisma and ambition. At just age 13, Tafari had been appointed to governor of Selala, and by the age of 18 assumed control of his late father's former province of Harar. And just 6 years later, at the tender age of 24, he became the most powerful man in Ethiopia in all but name when he was appointed as Ethiopian imperial regent. But Tafari's rise to power would be just as much as a result of good fortune due to his political genius. In 1928, he assumed the title of Negus, or king, and 2 years later, when Zewditu died, he was crowned emperor November 2nd, 1930, and took the name of Haile Selassie, Might of the Trinity. In 1931, he promulgated a new constitution which strictly limited the powers of parliament. Just around the same time as Tafari's coming of age, the ruling emperor Menelik II suddenly fell seriously ill and was under pressure to choose a successor. Out of all the emperor's potential heirs, the only two reasonable options were his grandson Lej Iyasu and his eldest daughter Wezero Zewditu. In June 1908, Emperor Menelik suffered a severe stroke and, fearing imminent death, announced Lej Iyasu as his chosen successor. Upon the death of Menelik II in 1913, Lej Iyasu, the son of Zewditu's half-sister Shewerega, assumed power. The new emperor viewed Zewditu as a threat and ordered her and her husband be taken to the countryside, the Fal province. Iyasu, however, quickly fell out of favor with the powerful nobles who ensured his rule when he was accused of flirting with Islam. Iyasu was removed from the throne and replaced by Zewditu on September 27, 1916. Wezero Zewditu was then crowned the Queen of Kings, or Empress, and her cousin, Tafari Makonnen, future Emperor Haile Selassie, was appointed her Prime Minister. The Empress, who patterned her reign after British Queen Victoria, whom she admired, nonetheless soon clashed with Tafari Makonnen, who wanted to modernize Ethiopia. On April 1, 1930, Zewditu mysteriously died in her palace. Zewditu, having no surviving children, was succeeded by Tafari Makonnen, who upon becoming emperor was renamed Haile Selassie. Tafari declared himself emperor. He was crowned Haile Selassie I, Power of the Trinity, his baptismal name, on November 2nd. In July 1931, the emperor promulgated a constitution that enshrined as law his prerogative to delegate authority to an appointed and indirectly elected bicameral parliament, among other modern institutions. During 1931 to 34, Haile Selassie instituted projects for roads, schools, hospitals, communications, administration, and public services. The combined effect of these projects was to increase the country's exposure to the world economy. By 1932, revenues were pouring into Addis Ababa from taxes applied to 25,000 tons of coffee exported each year. In the conflict with Italy, Haile Selassie's success persuaded Italy's ruler, Benito Mussolini, to undertake a preemptive strike before Ethiopia grew too strong to oppose Italian ambitions in the Horn of Africa after an Ethiopian patrol clashed with an Italian garrison at the Well Oasis in the Ogaden in November to December 1934. Rome began seriously preparing for war. Haile Selassie continued to trust in the collective security promised by the League of Nations. Only on October 2nd, 1935, upon learning that Italian forces had crossed the frontier, did he order mobilization. During the subsequent 7-month Italo-Ethiopian War, the Italian command used air and poison gas to separate, flank, and destroy Haile Selassie's poorly equipped armies. The emperor went into exile on May 2nd, 1936. For 5 years, from 1936 to 41, Ethiopia was joined to Eritrea and Italian Somaliland to form Italian East Africa. During this period, Italy carried out a program of public works, concentrating especially on highways and on agricultural and industrial development. Resistance to the occupation continued, however. The Italians dominated the cities, towns, and major caravan routes, while Ethiopian patriots harried the occupiers and sometimes tested the larger garrison towns. When Italy joined the European War in June 1940, the United Kingdom recognized Haile Selassie as a full ally, and the emperor was sued in Khartoum, Sudan, to help train a British-led Ethiopian army. This joint force entered Gojam on January 20th, 1941, and encountered an enemy quick to surrender. On May 5th, the emperor triumphantly returned to Addis Ababa. Defying the British occupation authorities, he quickly organized his own government. Returned to his power in February 1945 at a meeting with US President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Haile Selassie submitted memoranda stressing the imperative for recovering Eritrea and thereby gaining free access to the sea. In 1948 and again in 1949, 2 commissions established by the wartime Allied powers and by the United Nations, or UN, reported that Eritrea lacked national consciousness and an economy that could sustain independence. Washington, wishing to secure a communications base in Asmara, or Asmera, and naval facilities in Massawa, and also to counter possible subversion in the region, supported Eritrea's federation with Ethiopia. The union took place in September 1952.
It is good that you are here to record this picture of me in my palace garden at Addis Ababa. People who see this throughout the world will realize that even in the 20th century, with faith, courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.